I gave it a 50-50 with Gabriel and Symeou as centre halves. He's one of the players that we can't afford to lose because the drop-off in the replacement is so big. I think now we go down to a 30% chance of beating Real Madrid.
I wonder if we're asking a little bit too much of those players. That's my view.
No, Clive,
I know, Perry, I had to say it, mate. I had to say it just for you.
No.
Bukayo Saka came back, and Perry, he couldn't have had a better impact, could he?
The games that he played for us this season, 16, we averaged 2.1 goals per game. That just shows the effect that he has on us in attacking threat. If I had a choice, I hope Newcastle comes 7th, because Isaac will then be, he will go force a move from Newcastle, because he will be saying, I'm not playing, I'm too good, I've got to play in the Champions League.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Inside Gooners. I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the king of the Arsenal Vision podcast, Clive Palmer. Clive, good to have you with us. And Arsenal legend Perry Groves is alongside us too. Perry, how you doing? Good to see you both. Let's get into last night's game. I think that's a great place to start. A victory over Fulham. I want to get the negatives out of the way, guys. Let's start with the negatives and address that, and then we can move on to some of the more positive things we've seen. But I'll start with you, Clive. I couldn't help but come away from the Emirates, despite watching Arsenal win, watching Bukayo Saka return, and with a goal. I couldn't help but leave feeling disappointed at the news that Gabriel looks like he's picked up a hamstring injury.
Yeah, when you walked in the stadium, you're wondering about Saka's hamstring, and then you walk out the stadium wondering about Gabriel's hamstring, and it's like you're looking at your best attacker and your best defender, right? So you get one back, you lose the other, and it's like it's also almost epitomises the whole season, doesn't it? You sort of take a little step forward and you take a step back, and the outside world we're making excuses, but it has been a challenging year in that regard. We can't get a smooth way forward, but yeah, he's been brilliant this season, hasn't he? And he always plays. And then the moment we're all sort of imagining, could we do something in Madrid? But in our hearts, we know we need him to do something in Madrid. You know, so it's a real blow.
For sure, Perry. It was obviously a huge disappointment, and I know you've got some thoughts on hamstring injuries in general, because we're seeing a fair few of them at the minute.
Yeah, someone who's got short hamstrings and Jimmy Cranky. I feel their pain. There's one for the teenagers. When I was just doing a little bit of research, because sometimes I do, there's been 47 hamstring injuries across the Premier League this season. So it's the biggest muscle injury and the biggest injury by far. And obviously we've got Kai Havertz, who's had a bad hamstring injury when they was away in Dubai. Bukayo's had a operation. It looks like, unfortunately, Gabriel's going to be out, which is we get into the Real Madrid stuff, but that is massive. I've got a theory about, and I've said it for about 5 or 6 years, about the pitches. I think because the pitches now, they are sand and gravel based, so they're unbelievably firm. If you go back to my era, when obviously Highbury was like magnificent, it was the old just grass and mud basically. So you had a lot more give in those pitches. And they train on the same pitches, quite rightly, as what they play on. So there's 4 of those pitches at London Coney, got an indoor pitch there. So I think that because there's not as much give in those pitches and then you're pounding on a harder surface, I think that's going to affect your hamstrings. And that's exactly what happened. If you look at like Gabriel last night, I'd love to think that he might have just felt a little sort of tightness in there, you know what I mean? And he's going to be all right for next Tuesday. He's not. You can just tell that worse ways out, that looked like it was a 3 or 4 week sort of a hamstring injury. And our percentage of being able to beat Real Madrid now, I gave it a 50-50 with Gabriel and Symeou as centre halves. Now I think he is that important, and Symeou, he's one of the players that we can't afford to lose, because the drop-off in the replacement, and it's no disrespect to whoever plays there, is so big. I think now we go down to a 30% chance of beating Real Madrid. But I think it's the firmness of these pitches.
It could well be. It's a really good point, and I hadn't thought of it, if I'm being completely honest. But it makes a lot of sense. Clive, obviously this injury is bad news regardless, because Gabriel is such a top defender. But given the fact that Ben White's had a little bit of a niggle, which obviously saw him ruled out of last night's game, Calafiori's going to be out for a number of weeks as well, and Timber went off in the game as well. We're not quite sure how severe or what the deal is exactly with him, but it does feel like, again, for Arsenal, it's the worst possible timing. You get all your attackers back, or you start to, and then you start losing players at the other end of the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, just lose 4 defenders in just over a week or so, right? So all of us are thinking when Gabriel gets the yellow card playing for Brazil, misses the Argentina game, we're thinking happy days. He can get the one bit of rest that he never gets playing for us. He always plays, where Saliba gets the odd night off. And I'm thinking, great, comes back. I think we'll have our little theories, don't we, about this? Comes back, and I'm now thinking, well, maybe he should have played for Brazil. He would have been in condition, and maybe he wouldn't have gone. And I thought, well, maybe why did it go? And look at Traore running through us early in that game yesterday. He's having to do a few recovery sprints early, and suddenly it happens. And the science around it, and Perry's got a great theory there, but the science around hamstrings, it's very difficult to be precise about it because you never know when it's going to go. I mean, I wasn't a sprinter. Perry was a sprinter, right? And you can never tell it's going to go. It's always a shock when it goes, like being hit by a bullet, right? So it's very difficult time. But we've really suffered this year. Not with the 3 weekers that we're all hoping for. I mean, look at Kai Havertz. We've had 2 operations, the serious ones. That means somebody somewhere is going to be looking at what's happening to these players. And so there is a serious bit of analysis to be done. But my overall feeling, I don't want to go down this road, my overall feeling always is, I wonder if we're asking too much of the top level players that play international football and have international tournaments. I wonder if we're asking a little bit too much of those players. That's my theory.
No, Clive,
I know,
no,
Perry, I had to
no.
say it, mate. I had to say it just for you.
No. Trust me, they're chasing the pig's bladder for their round maybe twice a week. And obviously there's pressure in the games. But go back to the era of the 70s and 80s, players were playing 60, 70 games on worse pitches with not as much protection from referees. So, and you said there, the sports science behind it is unreal. They have their monitors on now where if they're in the red zone, they don't train. So, we disagree on that one, Clive, because I'd say,
Yeah, we do.
I think when you're winning, you don't feel as tired, you don't have as many niggling injuries. And we've actually, to be fair to us, even with all these injuries, we've only lost 1 in the last 21 in the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? So we've managed to cope. But now we're going up a level against Real Madrid. That's huge.
Now the point
all
about
the focus is obviously on. Go on, sorry.
Sorry, mate. The point about what we've done, regardless, is incredible. And I know sometimes it doesn't look smooth. It looks a bit lumpy on occasions. But our ability to stay in shape and get into shape quickly defensively is excellent. Then we do go to attack. We know what we're doing, and so we have a level of play now. We have a floor in this team that's really, really high. What we are lacking is that high ceiling, maybe, of attacking play that really makes us dream. But yeah, what we're doing, despite this, I think it's outstanding and it's been overlooked.
Yeah, for sure. And we've mentioned Gabriel there in quite depth and detail, but obviously Jurriën Timber's another concern, and in particular with the injury to White and the problems with Calafiori as well that seem to be ongoing, if we're being honest, when discussing the Italian. It is a concern. But what do we make of the performance yesterday? I guess the headline is that Bukayo Saka came back, and Perry, he couldn't have had a better impact, could he, coming straight off the bench?
No, I like the way Mikel's done it. I thought that it, give him sort of half an hour against Fulham, when the game is a bit more elongated and it's stretched out. And when you've had hamstring injuries, you can do all the training. You start off from jogging, into half pace, into full pace, and you have all your treatment, your massages. You're still a little bit wary of going 100% flat out, because in the back of your mind, I think Michael Owen's been well documented saying that he had a really bad hamstring in himself. And he was never the same when he came back because he had that doubt in his mind that his hamstring might go again. When I was looking at Bukayo last night, I thought he was running really free, which is great. There's a couple of full-out sprints that he had, and you look, every Arsenal fans in the Emirates going, "Oh, how is he going to be?" And he was fine. And it's not just his quality that he brings us. I was just looking again at the stats. The games that he played for us this season, 16, we averaged 2.1 goals per game. The 13 that he missed, we averaged 1.5. So that just shows the effect that he has on us in attacking threat. And for him to get his goal, where that's like football intelligence, where you have to be, if the ball's on the opposite side, you have to make sure you're the second centre forward on the far post. And it looks easy, but he has to be there to get that flick on from Martinelli. So I just think on the Bukayo Saka, and you saw them. I mean, he just loves his foot. You saw the massive beaming smile on his face when he's like headed it in and he runs behind the goal. Obviously, goes over to Martinelli. So on his side of it, I think he'll probably give him an hour again. I think he'll probably start him against Everton and give him an hour again to get those sort of proper big Premier League minutes under your belt to start against Real Madrid. So everything on the Bukayo Saka side was just 100% positive.
Yeah, I think you're right to highlight Mikel's management of the recovery. Obviously, I know Clive says this quite often. He was obviously further down the kind of recovery line than we knew as Arsenal fans. He had those 6 training sessions, as Mikel revealed, obviously a behind closed doors game as well. I actually asked Mikel Arteta after the game last night if there was a certain number of minutes that he had in mind, as in what Bukayo Saka needs before he's ready to start against Real Madrid. And he said, look, we're taking it bit by bit. We're going to see how he responds to tonight. And then we go again at the weekend and see what he's doing. But Clive, I know you were in the Emirates Stadium last night. I mean, just the atmosphere, what a turn it took when Bukayo Saka was seen getting ready to come on.
Yeah, when I sit on the same side as Mikel in that corner flag where he celebrated the goal and where he warms up. When he stood up, I thought, have I missed something? And because the crowd went crazy, and his impact on the ground and the club is just massive. And I think you realise how good someone is when they're not there, right? And when he came back, I was watching him closely, like everybody was. Particularly, I sort of had Ben White in my mind actually, because when Ben White came back, he didn't quite look as smooth in those first few minutes. So I'm thinking, Bukayo's going to be the same. Perry's right. He was spot on. Perfect. Everything he did. His mechanics look really, really good. His weight of pass, switching of play, getting it on the far post, everything was good. And in the last few minutes, when they were getting a little bit excited, he drops in the middle of the pitch and starts winning the ball, and so he's got a sense of responsibility, which I think is really, really good. So that responsibility, as well as his attacking responsibility, game one, he's taken it on board. Scored within 6 or 7 minutes of drawing the pitch. I can't speak high enough of him. I honestly can't speak high enough of him. To do that, he has lifted the whole club just by his appearance in that pitch.
Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt about that. Perry, I know you played on the flank yourself, and you'll understand a lot better than I do about what that kind of position entails. Bukayo Saka, we could wax lyrical about him all day, but Gabriel Martinelli's performance was a real positive for me last night. Would you agree?
I think Castagna is in a ice bath as we speak. He's probably in like a country cheat in a dark room somewhere because, again, Martinelli been out for like a few games. He comes back in. And my big criticism, you're talking about playing in the wide areas, my criticism of like a right winger like Saka's left-footed or a left winger like Martinelli's right-footed is that they come inside too often. They keep coming in. If you look at Martinelli, you can tell that they have been working him going on the outside. You can tell these last couple of games that he's played, he was taking Castagna on the inside and then he'd go on the outside. And we saw for the goal, even though he comes at the edge of the box, where he then plays in Mourinho because he comes inside. Mourinho can then go outside of him and get the cross in. And there was a couple of times he made a brilliant chance of Wanyeri in the first half where he went on the outside, got to the byline, pulled it back. That changes the angle. If you're playing against a back four or back five, that changes the angle of what the defenders have to do. They have to go on a 45-degree angle and they can't see what's coming in behind them. So I just think he looked like he was playing free. We talked about, Bukayo Saka, you worry about injuries coming back. He looks like he's like, no, I'm 100% match fit. I'm on it. And so I just love the way that now he's going on the outside. And the other thing that I noticed as well, which has been a feature of our play, probably going back to PSV game when we beat them 7 at their place, we're getting more bodies in the box now. If you look at the goals last night, there was 5 in the box, 4 in the box. Sometimes there's 6. So I think that Arteta's worked on that as well. Whereas sometimes, Mourinho looked a bit isolated. You want to have 1 or 2 in the box. Now we're flooding the box with bodies. And I don't think it's any coincidence we've started scoring more goals.
Clive, on Martinelli, we've seen him play on the right recently as well in the absence of Bukayo Saka. And I've been kind of thinking, does that suit him better? Does it mean that he can go on the outside, as Perry's mentioned, and it's a bit more natural? Or do we want him coming in field? And I've been kind of going back and forth in my own mind about where Martinelli is best suited. But watching him last night on the left kind of reminded me of all the great things he can do when coming in off that particular side. Where are you on Martinelli and maybe what his best position is?
If you ask him, he'll say his best position is on the left side. So once I heard that, then that's the end of that discussion, really. He's doing the right side job because he has to, because we've had injuries in that situation. And the manager has a right to have a look and see how things work. But for me, he's so much more natural on the left-hand side. And yeah, he did go on the outside a lot. And poor Castagna actually fell over at one point, didn't he? I mean, it was a bad moment for him, right? That'll be on the clips today, right? And but to be honest, his crossing's really improved. There's no point in going. He's got the pace to go on the outside. We know that. But, I always say when a cross comes in, try to keep it between the sticks almost, or quite close. And he's dropping that ball into areas where we can do things from, and away from the goalkeeper. That's the level of quality and control on his weak foot, which has really gone up. Trossard does it quite well as well off his left foot. He fires them across. And we are a crossing team by design, really. We've become a lot more that way, and we're crashing the box with 3 players in the centre. So yeah, he was excellent last night. I sort of felt for him a little bit towards the end of the game, because I'll ask you two guys really, because I think we used our substitute windows, and he was on the pitch quite late, and he looked quite fatigued to me, and Mikel was really getting stuck into him on that left-hand side, him and Miles, and they were both tiring. You can almost predict something's going to happen, and I felt for him because we had the injuries, the situation, we had to use 2 substitutes in that window, and we didn't use one at half time. And so the third window for Saka, obviously. So we didn't have, if I'm right, Harry Perry, tell me, I felt in a normal scenario, he would have come off 10 minutes sooner, and then he would have been absolutely fine. But he got to the end of the game, so hopefully we can look after him on Saturday morning versus Everton.
You said about the minutes again, and when Bukayo scored, he went straight over, didn't he, to the fitness coaches, because they know sort of what level they're at. And I think they'll probably look at Martinelli and think maybe same thing, that he wanted him to see the game out. That when you're coming back from any injuries, that final 10 minutes, you have to dig a little bit deeper, find a little bit more resources about yourself, which is exactly what he did. But here's one for you boys, right? We have all of our analysts. These days, it's algorithms, logarithms, iPads, whatever. You're talking about our 2 wide players. Why not, if it's not working, after 20, 25 minutes, swap wings? Why not put Bukayo on the left-hand side, Martinelli come on the right, just to give the 2 fullbacks you're playing against different problem, different options? You know what I mean? Because sometimes I think we can get a bit too formulaic. So when I was playing with George Graham, so if I was right wing and Martinelli was left, or Brian Marwood or Hans Limpar, or as left and Rocky, he would say every 15, 20 minutes, just have a little swap, even for 5, 10 minutes. And trust me, when you're playing against Stuart Pearce, you couldn't wait to get away from the right wing. You've got that. Can we swap after about 30 seconds? So, I just like to see the wingers swap over a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think a little bit more variety in our game would certainly help us when we're trying to break down these low blocks. We'll come on to a couple more individuals in just a minute, but I was a little bit frustrated towards the end of the game, Clive, with how many open spaces we were leaving. We were 2-0 up, and it felt like there was no need, really, to leave some of the gaps between the kind of lines of our team as we were doing. And I thought Miles Lewis-Skelly, I never want to criticise him because he's so young when he's so great for his age, but I felt like he went roaming a little bit too much in the latter stages of the game. You mentioned Martinelli running out of steam there. And obviously with Kivior in the side rather than Gabriel, and Partey moving over to right back, it felt like we were a little bit more vulnerable to those transitions. And I think we actually gifted Fulham a way back into the game by being so open. And naivety is not something I would associate with this Mikel Arteta side. It's something that we've really improved on over the years. But yesterday, I thought you saw that creep in towards the end, and we gave Fulham a chance to make something of it.
Yeah, okay, I've got good for you, the manager, and he was going mad. He was going mad on that left-hand side. And sometimes when you're tired, maybe just stand still. Don't go searching for your A game. Wait for the game to come to you a little bit. And I felt Miles pushed on a little bit into those areas. And, if you've got a centre half there who's very vociferous to say, oi, where are you going? Then you stand still. and keep your. I don't know what the communication is on the pitch, but I would have liked to have seen him pull him in a little bit more. You could tell there were spaces on that side developing. Obviously Declan moved more central. He's sort of to the left of the double pivot, if you know what I mean, at the base of our team. So he covers that left side when we get a big side. So we broke up our units. They were all broken up by injury, and so that's why we looked a little bit disorganised. And we do play in small pods. We play in threes, and we know what each others are doing, and we rotate around. So that was all broken apart. And sometimes you just got to stand still and let the game come to you. But we're still pushing on, and we left the spaces for them. And they got their goal. They probably deserved one. They probably deserved one, and made a bit edgy for the last couple of minutes.
Perry, there's no way George Graham would have stood for that, was there?
So the thing is, I think it comes down, you've got the coach on the touchline with Mikel, and you've got senior players in there. You've got Partey, who's a senior player, Saliba now, who's like in the leadership group with Declan. Sometimes on the pitch, you've just got to say, just keep the back four. Just keep the back four shape. Just keep it nice and narrow. And we'll have at least one, which would have been Declan, just sat in front of the two centre-halves and just say, let the rest, let the front three or front four, let them get on with it. Because it wasn't just down the left-hand side. If you look, Muniz missed a great header, great chance where they broke down the left-hand side. Their goal came from the left-hand side, just a break. Obviously, Muniz gets his little sort of deflection. So even though, obviously, there's substitutions, it comes down to game management. That's what it comes down to. But at the end of it, I must admit, in the game of a whole, obviously, Clive, you were there, but, I'm watching it, whatever. I just think we looked fairly comfortable. I think it was a matter of time before we broke them down. And as well, with Mourinho up front, he's got 5 and 8 since he's been playing up front. Now, if that was a centre forward who got 5 and 8 come in, you'd be going, that ain't bad. He's done quite well there.
Yeah. If we'd have bought him in January, we'd have been buzzing, wouldn't we? We were saying, what a good striker he is.
Yeah.
Who found him? So, yeah, he's done well.
Also, as well, when we talk about like Odegaard, with Saka on that, I think him coming on that right-hand side will have a massive impact on Martin Odegaard.
That's a lovely segue, because I did want to talk about Martin Odegaard.
We don't just throw this together, H.
Yeah, exactly. It's all professionally done. But Perry, what have you made of his performances recently? Because I was covering the game last night, and sort of at half time, I had a little scroll through social media. I try normally not to do that because I feel like it can potentially sway your way of thinking if you see the masses coming up with a sort of particular opinion. But there seemed to be a lot of criticism for Martin Odegaard. There was a lot of people taking to the platform to kind of say, look, it's not really working for him at the moment. There's no doubt there's been a drop-off. But is it as simplistic as saying he hasn't had the right players around him, or do we need to look at the Norwegian as well and sort of be obviously critical, but in the right way, of course?
I think, you know what? I think it's a bit of both. I think obviously him coming back, he's had his injuries, and he's looking for. Odegaard is one of those players who relies on his rhythm. He relies, because when he's playing, I call him the conductor with the baton. Then we are very smooth, in possession. With Bukayo Saka come back on that right-hand side, they just have a natural understanding. Sometimes you have relationships in teams, like Clive said about, playing threes. And so most of the time on the right-hand side, when Saka's there with Odegaard, and it was Ben White and Saliba, those four just had a natural understanding. It's very interactive. Saka would come in and Odegaard would go on the outside, or Ben White would go on the outside. So I think I'm not going to be critical of Odegaard, because I can see a player, obviously, as our captain, I can see a player that is trying his socks off to get himself into that rhythm. And he's a bit clunky at the minute. It's just not happening. You can see his frustration in some of his passes, where when he's flowing, he doesn't think twice. He just executes them with no problem, little dinks over the top or little balls inside the fullback. So I think he's just waiting just to click into gear, and it's about him getting his rhythm. And I'm not like you, H. I don't look at all the doubters and whatever negativity on X or Twitter, where it used to be, or whatever. I just look at my own eyes, and I know that he's just searching for that flow and that rhythm. But I know that he's giving it everything he can to get himself in that rhythm.
He works hard, right? He's doing everything. He is not just conducting when he has the ball, he's conducting what we do when we're off the ball. He can see where the next pass is going. He's pointing people where they got to go. So he definitely owns the manager's philosophy in his head, and he helped the team implement it. And that was one of the first things I noticed when he came back in that, after his injury, he came back in the Chelsea game. We looked better as a unit. We looked more together. Our distances were better. I think he has a massive influence in our philosophy of our game. When I look at him as a player, he's trying to work through his form, as Perry said, to get back. And while he's doing that, he's not jogging, mate. He's still working hard. I bet he's in the top 3-4 kilometres covered every single game. He's not jogging his way through. I do think he's had a physical change. He doesn't quite look as strong. Maybe some of that is because his partner's not there. He's not able to move the ball as quickly, and he's getting involved in more collisions. Maybe that's that. But it looks like there's been a physical change. Maybe that's partly to do with the fact that he may not be able to train as much post-injury, etc. So I'd be looking for him to get to the end of the season and recover really well and hopefully come back properly. Because that injury, I'm not sure if any of us know how bad that was, but he's working through it. And I often find sometimes when a player's doing that, and he's doing that for all of us, and he's not right, but he's not hiding, I've got a lot of respect for him, a lot of respect. And we've got to wait till his form comes back.
That's kind of enough about last night. Obviously, we're going to win the league now because we've closed the gap on Liverpool to 9 points. Can't wait.
Here comes the wobble.
There it goes.
The old jar wobble.
Absolutely. But let's discuss some other big Arsenal news. Now, over the weekend, it was announced that Andrea Berta will take over as the club's sporting director. He's already in the building. He met some of the members of the press at the press conference on Monday. And he was, of course, in attendance last night at the Emirates Stadium. Clive, from sort of listening to him speak, it seems like his English is a little bit limited at the moment. That's something that's going to develop and improve. But there's no questioning his credentials, is there? There's no question in his past track record.
No, there isn't. And I'm really pleased to see some new blood coming to the club. I don't know what he's going to be like. But they went for an extensive search to get to him. And he's got a good reputation in the game. I think from speaking to people who were in that press conference, Harry, when he met people, he's a quiet guy. I don't think we're going to see him holding his own press conferences and things like that. He's a quiet guy, maybe not so charming as Edu, for example, on the exterior, who's a much more personal person who'll talk to anything and anybody, So he's a bit more of a quiet guy. So it'd be interesting to see how he operates.
He spoke to me once, so you're right.
He spoke to me as well. And so, and he's very personable, right? So let's see how this guy develops and what his role is in the club. Not his role per se, because the role's the same. He has a big responsibility across all facets of football, including the youth team and the women's team and the men's team. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops going forward and what he brings and adds to the group. Because you have to be honest, as fans, we haven't won the league in quite a while, and we're trying to cross that line with a good set of players. So what is he going to add to help us get over that line? And I'm genuinely interested to see what he does and how he affects our decision making going forward. So yeah, good luck to him.
Perry, it's a great appointment in terms of the name and the track record, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there's a lot of focus on what he's going to do in terms of bringing players in. But if you look at some of the players who are out of contract in 2027, it includes Bukayo Saka, Saliba, Gabriel, Martinelli. There is work to be done in terms of keeping hold of what we have as well. So this is a big job, make no mistake about it.
It's a big job, but he's A-list, by the way. And obviously we're all Gooners. The thing that I think is great is he's not coming to us if when they interview him and he goes through the process that we haven't got money to. We're going to go big in the summer transfer window because he ain't coming otherwise, because he'll be asking them, like, we had to go and get him. So he'd have been asking them, okay, what's your plans? What's Mikel's vision? What's his philosophy? So he would look at that. And I love the way that he actually said, he looked at us and he knows that we're one position. Everybody knows we're one position missing. And a couple of other signings, a little bit of squad depth. And if you look what he did at Atletico Madrid, we said about it, like he signed Rodri. It was Griezmann, I think. So I think he got Suarez, didn't he, for like 5.5. But he did have João Felix for 130 million. So there are brilliant signings in there, but not every sporting director can get everything right. But he's got experience, he's got knowledge. nobody signs, right, for a football club because of a sporting director. If anybody's signing for us, they're signing because it's Mikel Arteta and where we are and where we're going. But those two have to have trust like Edu and Arteta did. They had trust with each other. They knew what each other was looking for. Make no mistake, Arteta will always have the final say, obviously, who comes in because he's managing now, quite rightly. But as a Gooner, I know what we're going big in the transfer summer transfer window, and I think, and I'm not being because I'm like red tinted specs or whatever. If we make the right summer signing, I think he looks at us and thinks that we could be the dominant team in the next 3, 4, 5 seasons. And you mentioned the 4 players that are out of contract. If I was one of those 4, I was never on their level. Obviously, I was like in the middle tier. But you'll be looking at thinking, right, if I'm going to commit myself, I want to see that the club is signing a proper big centre forward. And once that happens, I think you'll see those 4 players go, yep, I'm buying into this, because it looks like, well, we're going to come second. 3rd year on the trot, these players will be like, I'm not going to swear, obviously, but we're peed off at coming second. And we're that close. And it was Mikel's sort of 5-year plan to where we wanted to be. And look at Man City, they got a huge rebuild. I don't think Guardiola's going to do it. Liverpool, again, will be in a huge rebuild in the summer. So I'm excited, the fact that he looks at the project and he goes, yep, I can see what this is all about. And he'll have a synchronicity with Arteta. So I think as a Gooner, I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah, Clive, we've talked about that before, haven't we? The kind of the relationship that he needs to have with Mikel Arteta. It's healthy for there to be a bit of challenge between the two of them, right? They need to sanity check one another's decisions, but synergy is really, really important. They've got to be singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah, and some people are saying, why was Mikel involved in the recruitment process? But we all know he's front and center of this project, right? He's the main man.
Control freak.
And, yeah, they need to work. They need to work together, right? Simple as that. And I think it is seen as a partnership, and that's really important. And I think he's not just joining Mikel. There are other people in this team, shall we say, as you know them, Harry, and I said you, Perry, as well. The people behind that are in that recruitment team that are on the board. He's part of that whole picture, and he's got to find his position in that. And I'm just so pleased to see that we have taken a decision to bring some A-list knowledge into the club. You only know what you know, right? If someone can look at something in a slightly different way and bring diversity of thinking to a group of people that are trying to get better, trying to improve, in their key peak years. Look at Mikel now. He's done it for 5 years. He's not a kid anymore on his first job. He's trying to deliver something for all of us. And so we're trying to help him. And I'm really pleased with taking this decision. And hopefully it works out.
The hours after that report came out, the announcement, I should say, came out confirming Andrea Berta's appointment, there was a report that followed, which suggested that Arsenal are seriously looking at Victor Gyökeres. Now, I'll come to you first on the Swedish international, Clive, because he's someone that I've admired for quite some time, but I remember personally being put off by the release clause that Sporting were talking about last summer, which was around about 100 million euros. Now, since then, there have been reports to suggest that actually they'd accept a fee that is a lot lower than that. And then you hear that Arsenal are interested. You hear that Andrea Berta's an admirer of his as well. And all of a sudden, this feels like a really good option to me. What's your take on the player and his suitability to Arsenal?
Yeah, there's players that we all know. We know all the names, don't we, of the forwards that we're looking at. We know them well. And he was one. And fair enough, when it was 100 million euros, mate, it was too much. It was too much for a 26-year-old potentially that we missed at Coventry. I remember watching that player final versus Luton. I didn't really see him on the pitch too much. And but hey, he's a good player, and he got Coventry promoted that year, so they got really, really close. I did go to Lisbon when we played there this season, and I watched him closely. And well, actually, I was worried about him because we all knew about him, and he had a very physical game against our 2 centre backs who were really good, and they held on to him quite well. But he kept working the channels, banging in shots, and I thought, he's got something about him. He's 26, right? As it comes back to it, we're looking at other players maybe a bit younger, in Sesko, for example, 21, 22, and it's a 26-year-old. Is that a sign to the pace of what we want to do next? Maybe not having another project up there, but having somebody ready-made, as ready-made as they can be, coming from another league. We looked at Ollie Watkins in January, again, ready-made. We all have our favourites. You can take your choice. But I'm looking at the strategy rather than the player. If we go for 26-year-old, what does that tell me? That tells me we're not messing about. Right? We have a number of players of that age group. They come on the same timeline, and we're here to deliver over a 3-year period. If we go for a 21-year-old, which again I'm fine with, we're saying, okay, we're going to develop with a striker, 2 strikers going to share that role until one gets on top, right? So the strategy is what interests me. The player choice can change in a tweet, mate, as you know that. The player choice can change. If the right journalist tells you we're looking at somebody, then suddenly we're looking at that player, and that's how it goes. So that's why I am with it. I like the player. Does he suit us tactically? I think he can, because he's so direct. He's absolute clarity. I want to score a goal, and I'm going to smash that ball on either foot at that net, and he can do that. So it'd be interesting to see which one we fall down on.
85 goals in 92 games for Sporting Lisbon. So he's got quite the track record, Perry. What are your thoughts on Victor Gyökeres? Is he the one?
Well, I think there's a snobbery about the Championship and the talent that's in the EFL. Player myself, came from obviously the EFL culture. And if you score goals for Coventry, where basically you're feeding on scraps and you can handle the physicality of the Championship, which obviously proved that you can, then your next challenge is going to Sporting Lisbon, where there's a load of pressure. Probably the joint biggest club in Portugal. He said he's nearly a goal a game. And you look at him and you think, is he mobile? Absolutely, he's mobile. Is he physical? Absolutely, he's physical. Can he finish? Both feet. And he will score. You can't guarantee, right? Because can you handle pressure of Arsenal? Because Arsenal is one of the biggest clubs in the world. So you've got to have that mentality. But I just looked at him. I think he'd thrive on that. And any centre forward at that level, you'll be getting us 20, 25, 30 goals a season. And the other thing, if you look at if it's Gyökeres, if it's Ekitike, if it's Sesko, Isak, all those players are 6'2" and over. So Mikel is still going down the physical route because he knows that you need physical presence and you need to be mobile. Personally, if I had a choice, I hope Newcastle comes 7th because Isak will then be, he will actually force a move from Newcastle because he will be saying, I'm not playing, I'm too good, I've got to play in the Champions League. So as a Gooner, brilliant. Obviously, they won the Carabao Cup, really pleased for them. Hope they have a little bit of a nosedive in the Premier League, and that gives us another option. But say all of those players that we've got, as Clive was saying there, this is the end coming. Not the end, but this is the final piece of the project for Arteta. And I don't think we've got enough time to buy potential, to nurture a player, to get used to the way that we play in the Premier League play. So, but any 4 that I mentioned, I asked Alan Smith last week. I was with Smudge last week. I just said, how's your knees? Any chance you could just come play 3 or 4 games? Because we just need a proper centre forward. That's it. End of story.
Let's start looking ahead to first the weekend, and then obviously we've got that big game coming up against Real Madrid on Tuesday. Clive, as fans, it's kind of easy to look beyond Everton and look at Real Madrid, and we're all worried about Gabriel's injury, for example, more so because we fear what that means against Real Madrid than what it does at Goodison Park at the weekend. Obviously, the players can't afford to seep into that mindset. You've got to go and take each game as it comes, and you've got to be fully focused and all the rest of it. Given what happened last night and that we lost a couple of players, obviously Mikel's options in terms of rotation are limited, particularly in that back line. But do you think that will play on his mind? Do you think that fear of maybe losing 1 or 2 more might come into his thinking and alter his team selection?
He could do it. We're sort of like, if we lose 4 defenders in a week, you've got it sort of selects itself almost what you're going to do. And the Ben White one is a bit worrying because it sounds like it's the knee again, a little niggle there. So hopefully it's just a niggle, And the Timber one, it's a knee again. And you know what it's like with knees. You just can't tell till they have a look at it. So it is a worry. Kivior came on last night. He's quite mobile. He passes the ball well. Sometimes lacks a bit of aggression in the challenge. He lets situations control him rather than controlling the situation. I like the player, but he just sometimes at the very highest level just sort of lets you down a little bit. Steber's smooth, obviously, and Miles had a bit, he's still 18. He's still 18, and every now and again, maybe needs to sit for a few minutes, but he's had a lot happen to him in the last few weeks, so we're going to be relying on him. So maybe there'll be a bit of rotation. We've got Zinchenko there, and we've got Tierney there that are not being used for a little while. We need a bit of luck with the injury report this week, that's for sure. Because in the ground last night, everyone was talking about Madrid. And everyone was. And it's just like, we're just trying to get there in the best possible shape, and we didn't really achieve that last night, despite the win.
Perry, you've been in dressing rooms at the highest level. How do you protect against maybe that little bit of, I don't want to say complacency, because I don't think that's the right word going into the Everton game, but how do you protect against being maybe preoccupied by an upcoming fixture?
Well, all that happens is if there's any sort of little niggles, as Clive said there, any doubts, then those players won't play. But anybody that says they're 100% fit, they'll play. Because if you look at Mikel's past, even in the Carabao Cup, he wasn't resting some of our main players. When we're looking at the team sheets coming through, you're like, oh, really? Look, Saliba's playing, Gabriel's playing, Bukayo Saka's playing, Declan Rice is playing. So he will go as full strength as he possibly can against Everton. Because again, full well when you're going up to there, they're on a roll at the minute. Obviously, that new manager bounce under David Moyes, and Everton are always physical. So as a player, I'll guarantee you these players won't be thinking about as soon as they come in today and they'll have their ice baths and have their recovery, do their yoga and massages. He won't even be saying anything to the players about Real Madrid. Not one thing we mentioned. It'll be about Everton, because what we have to make sure is we've got probably a 2% chance of winning the Premier League title now. Because if it was 7 or 8 points, I think we could have chased Liverpool down, because I think they're having their wobble at the minute, and they've got that safety net now with 12 points. But we got to make sure that we just keep winning. You win. You want to win on Saturday. You want that momentum, all that positivity. From it was a good time to play Fulham, obviously with the come down that they had from losing in the quarter-final against Crystal Palace. So that was good for us. Don't know how the Merseyside derby is going to go. Hopefully, they'll give Liverpool a bit of a bloody nose. But he will go there with the full intention. It's a 12:30 kickoff as well, I think, isn't it? Yeah, so
yeah.
He'll go there and he'll go as strong. I wouldn't be surprised if Jorginho plays and maybe Partey at right back to try and give you a little bit more control in the game, because that's what Jorginho gives you. As Clive said there, maybe Kieran Tierney, you might see him play come at left back, or Zinchenko. But other than that, there's players that need the minutes. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bukayo Saka starts, or worst ways out, he gets a half under his belt.
Yeah, I think it's important to continue building him up in particular, because we're definitely going to need him against Real Madrid. Just on that Madrid game, Clive, if you were Mikel Arteta, and I know there's still a few days, and I'd imagine if you're anything like me, you'll probably mull over it in your head 100 times between now and then. What's the best way to approach this game? Do you feel like Arsenal need to be aggressive in the first leg, given we're at home? Do you feel like we need to really take the game to Madrid and see what happens? Or is it first and foremost about staying in it? Because it's a dangerous kind of sort of conundrum to fall into. You can overcommit and leave yourself vulnerable against a very good counter-attacking side, as we know they are. Or you can end up sinking a little bit and, maybe stay in the game, but maybe come the second leg, you regret not pushing that a little bit further. What's your kind of early thoughts on how we approach the first leg?
I think it's very important to be ourselves. And we're trying to win stuff, and you can't come to the crunch moment and then decide to hide behind the settee, right? You have to be yourself. You've got to play your football. We go into wide areas. We cut back crosses. We link to Odegaard. We have third man runs. It's very important to be ourselves. Real Madrid are not a high possession team. You know, they'll probably have a look at us and look how to pick our pockets. They've got very quick players on the transition, so when we make mistakes in possession, they're going to spring in around us and behind us, which is why the Gabriel injury is a real blow, because he's very good at sensing danger. I think it's very important to be ourselves, because they don't come up against teams like us who are quite physical in centre midfield in particular. We are very good on set pieces, as you know. They don't see that every week. So let's not disappear and run away from our own shadow. I think it's very important that we want to push ourselves. We're a top 6 club in the world. Let's be that team and really attack them and see what happens. When we played Bayern Munich, we had them in that home leg, but we didn't quite take advantage of our superiority. And we made a couple of mistakes, and they ended up going 2-1 up, and we were dominant. We got it back to 2-2, but the damage was done in the first leg. So we've got to learn from that and try to be aggressive and really take them on and take advantage when we're on top.
Your thoughts, Perry? I mean, Clive sounds really bold and brave. I will be the guy that hides behind the settee, I think, in a situation like that.
I honestly come out from behind the settee, come out with me and Clive sitting on the settee, right on the edge of it, no cushions. I tell you why, because this Real Madrid team, we all know about their attacking prowess, you know what I mean, with like Jude Bellingham, Vinicius Junior, and Rodrigo, whatever. But this Real Madrid team concede goals. You only got to see against a Real Sociedad where they concede 4. You know what I mean? They're 1-0 up from the first leg, and it goes to extra time, they get themselves through. And I've got a lot of mates who live in Spain, and the Spanish journalists, they thought before Gabriel got injured, they thought this was a 50-50 tie. We were the last team they wanted to play against because they knew that we have a defensive structure, but we had struggled breaking teams down who sit deep and, you know, allow us to come onto them. This Real Madrid team doesn't do that. They leave gaps. They leave, you know, open spaces at the back. So I'm with Clive. You don't want to come off the pitch and come off thinking, what if? What if we, you know, we've gone for it? What if we have to take risks? And what you have to do sometimes in any sport, you have to risk losing to go and try and win the game. And that's what we have to do. And the Emirates will be rocking. Hopefully, Bukayo doesn't, you know, pick up injuries, whatever, and he's like number 7. You'll have a massive cheer. They'll play North London forever. It'll be, I've got no hair on my head, but the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up. This is where we want to be. This is exactly where we want to be. And if you want to have any success in the Champions League, you have to beat the big dogs. I must admit, I know we've got injuries. I can't wait. I'm absolutely buzzing for the game.
This is what the Champions League is all about. This is what you want to be in this competition for. You want these ties against the European juggernauts, and you want to pit your wits against them. So, yeah, maybe I'll feel a little bit bolder and braver come the day of the game. But right now, I've got to be honest. Yeah, you talk me around. Nice one, guys. Thank you very, very much. Always a pleasure to speak Arsenal with you guys.
Boys.
Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thanks to Clive Palmer, Arsenal Vision podcaster, and Arsenal legend Perry Groves. And we'll be back with another episode of Inside Gooners very, very soon.